I'd like to introduce our three panelists who have so kindly agreed to tell us about their experiences as clinical trial participants. After the three presentations, I will moderate a panel discussion. So we will hear from Mark Becker, who will offer his perspective as a cystic fibrosis patient. Fisola Olayera, who has children with a rare disease, so her perspective as a parent, and Sandra Holsworth, who will present a perspective as a transplant patient. So I will hand it over to Mark to get us started.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Mark Becker, and I was really honored to be part of this clinical study because my clinical study journey has been quite unique, where I've taken part in, I counted the other day, I've taken part in 38 clinical studies. So those include studies that were a day long, a week long, some that were for a year or so. But I've been very involved in the clinical study experience. And the way I kind of ended up doing all these clinical studies was when I was a child, I actually was asked to do many studies, and I always kind of refused to do that as I have cystic fibrosis, and I was diagnosed with that as two. So I had many opportunities to be part of studies, but when I was a child and when I was a teenager, I didn't see the benefit, or I wasn't interested. But when I became an adult, I recognized that this was an opportunity for me to learn about cystic fibrosis from a different perspective. But really the big changing point was when I became an adult. I was followed at a hospital, and this hospital I developed, I would say, a closer relationship with my medical team, where I felt I could trust their guidance and input. So when the doctors of my clinical team, approached me about a medical study, since I had that relationship, I felt more comfortable. And ever since that time, I have taken part in those 38 studies, which some have been good and some have been not so great. So I will talk about the things that I like. So the first thing that I like is my economic portfolio has drastically improved since I started taking point in medical studies, because now I have all this insider information. I know when a medication might be doing well. So I am, that is one of the great benefits, is I have insider knowledge, but don't tell anyone because I don't want to get charged for insider trading. So we'll just keep that a secret here. So it is good that my portfolio has improved because of that. But one of the other things that I like, one of the perks of clinical studies, is most of the clinical studies provide some level of food reimbursement. So providing lunch or dinner or breakfast. So one thing I really like is Burger King and fast food. And the reason why I like it so much is because my wife, she will not let me eat it. So during clinical studies, since I get a lunch and it's reimbursed, sometimes they'll buy the lunch. She doesn't even know about it. So that is my secret, and that's something that really motivates me, because it's like a special treat that I kind of reward myself with for participating in these clinical studies. So I get my great stock options and I get my fast food, which are two great things for me. Another great thing about clinical studies for me is I think this is kind of done just based on human nature, is because I've taken part in so many medical studies, my care team is typically involved with the research in some fashion. So I've developed a really great relationship with the nurses, with the doctors, with clinical researchers. So as a result, I do get some preferential treatment at my clinic. So I will get good appointments. The doctors will make sure they're first to see me, so then I can get home faster. And just things like that make life a lot easier. So those are one of kind of the hidden benefits. I don't think my doctors would say they provide me favoritism, but I know that they do because I can see it in their actions. Another thing that I really like is, fortunately, I've been taking part in a clinical trial that I'm currently part in, which is a drug trial that I've been part of for about 3 years now. And in this trial, it's really been life-changing and life-altering because this particular medication has had drastic results on my health. And I feel very privileged to be part of this study because it has really improved my health significantly. And I am looking forward to having that drug get passed by Canada Health. So then other people will have access to the medication. So I'm really proud of that study. And it was really nice to see because in that study, I was part of phase 1 all the way now to where I still get to, they've finished all the phases, they've published the research, but I still get to be part of getting the medication because of those positive results. So I'm very fortunate and happy about that. Things that I didn't like. So this always makes me think of Wonder Bread. And I think of Wonder Bread because one time I did a study, a clinical study, and I didn't really know what it was, but I said, sure, I'll do it. They said it was something about digestion and things along those lines. But you know, to be honest, you get these huge long agreements. And I'm not gonna read through all that. I just go to the back, sign my name. I'm ready to go. So I got to this clinical study, and they had 10. I had to eat 10 white Wonder Bread slices in 10 minutes time, which actually was very hard. And I remember doing it, and at that moment, kind of like the light switched for me, because that study, I remember I didn't really know what I was doing or why they were giving me that. So I really thought to myself, I need to change my mentality when I went to these clinical studies, because I was just doing random things and not really asking questions, or I didn't get enough information. So that really made me really feel like a guinea pig, and I felt like, you know, I didn't really feel like I was an active member of the study, and so that was really a difficult thing for me. Another thing I don't like is just being poked and prodded sometimes. Sometimes I've been part of studies where they do some invasive procedures. So, you know, that hasn't been the best of experiences, but at least I know that it's for the good, but just sometimes it's painful or it hurts. So when I've had to do biopsies and things like that, that becomes very hurtful and painful. But one of the best things about medical studies or clinical trials, and why I have done so many, is basically because I've learned so much about cystic fibrosis that I would have never learned if I didn't take part in these clinical studies. So now when I do a clinical trial, I always ask questions. I always, you know, inquire about, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And that has really been so rewarding for me. It's something that I truly value, being able to learn more and then also get to see the positive effects of these clinical trials has been super beneficial. So I would really recommend clinical trials to anyone with cystic fibrosis, and I've advocated for people to try them and, you know, ask the right questions, and it can be really beneficial, especially when you have a chronic disease. You don't have a lot of control, and I found when I take part of these clinical trials, I get some of that control back. So that was something I really appreciated about them. So I just would like to thank everyone once again for having me. I really appreciate having the opportunity to be here. Clinical studies have been, for the most part, very beneficial to my life and have provided me with such great hope. And I thank you all for all the hard work that you do. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing those great experiences with us. So Fizzola is up next.
Hi. Hi, my name is Fisola. So my two oldest sons have sickle cell. So my oldest son is currently in a long-term trial. His brother is currently on monthly transfusions while awaiting an appropriate trial. So from my experiences in trials, and we've done small ones as well as this long-term one, and interacting with other families, I found some things to consider that come into play. So the first thing that I would say is personality types. So understanding who you're dealing with and their thought process. And if you pay attention to their line of questioning and their focuses, it will come to surface. So when looking at the big 5 personality types, I score high on conscientiousness, which means I'm very detail and process orientated. Schedules and timelines are important to me, as well as the big and small picture. So when speaking to someone of that nature, glossing and skimming over things will have a negative reaction and a decreased likelihood of joining your trial. For me, understanding everything builds trust in the process, for me to feel secure in entrusting my child's life in your care. The doctor leading my son's trial understood this and rose to the occasion, surpassing my expectation. However, some personality types do not require this, so it's important that you read your audience. The next thing, which leads me to my next topic, benefits. When engaging with parents who were considering the trial, I found 3 main reasons that they were interested, in no particular order: decreasing stress level, improving health, and the reduction of pain. Every relationship, whether it be business or personal, to some degree is maintained by some level of benefits. Understanding what their need is and explaining how you will meet their specific pain point increases the likelihood of them joining your trial. This one speech fits all is not going to cut it. Which leads me to my third point, culturally relevant. We are all to some degree products of our environment. I'm not here to debate nature versus nurture. I believe most of us will agree that to some degree they intersect. But some biases and concerns are individual and family-based. But there are larger community and ethnic-based concerns that need to be specifically addressed, and ignoring them will decrease your enrollment. I cannot speak for every culture, but within my community, trust and the motivation of medical professionals in uncharted territory is not high. It is for that reason, how you interact with and handle each patient is super important. Earlier, I spoke to benefits. Hiding your motivation to want to help doesn't always work in your favor, especially if the patient already knows the benefits in it for you and you approach the situation as though it solely benefits them. This erodes trust. Because while the world is big, specific communities of diseases and disorders are small. And someone with a bad experience is more likely to spread it than someone with a good experience. Which leads me to my final thought. Families in trials of genetic disorders, like myself. The way you interact with them is further reaching, because the perception of that family, and not just that immediate family, towards trials can be swayed either way, making it more difficult for future trials for that connected lineage. Whereas if you have a positive experience, you are more likely to encourage your other family members to do the same, as with my 2 sons, making your job that much easier. I think we can all see the value in working smarter and not harder. Thank you so much for listening to me today, for your time and your consideration.
Thank you so much, Fisola. You have given us an incredible amount of food for thought. So I'm really looking forward to the question period. And now, Sandra.
Hi, I'm Sandra Holsworth. So a little bit about myself. I've been part of the healthcare system for about 40 years. It took about 10 years from the time I was 18 till I was about 28 before I was diagnosed with a rare liver disease, and that was called primary sclerosing cholangitis. We just call it PSC. And at the same time, I was told that I had Crohn's colitis. I had the disease for quite some time, but after medications and some treatment, in 1997, I received a liver transplant because I was at end-stage liver failure. And so that was 24 years ago last month. And although I did try all the medications for Crohn's and colitis disease, unfortunately, my disease continued to progress. And in 2012, I had a permanent ostomy. I also had a scare with melanoma, and I do have skin cancer, but now that I see a dermatologist, I'm on top of it. So you can see from this that I have had opportunities to be approached about clinical trials. During the time the time I was doing clinical trials, what I liked about it is being, first of all, helping researchers to improve quality of life for other patients. A lot of times some of the medications or trials that were being done couldn't benefit me, but I knew that they could benefit other patients following my steps. It helped made you feel part of something bigger picture. What I didn't like is the timing of some of the times I was approached about clinical trials. One of my first experiences was actually in my hospital bed recovering from my transplant. I was high on prednisone and high on life because I finally felt the best I've ever felt in a long time. But I wasn't prepared to read a document or make decisions that were necessary. However, don't get me wrong, I do understand that that is a good time for researchers. And what I'm trying to do is to let hospitals that are research hospitals to prepare patients so that they realize that during your visit, you might be approached by research teams and you may be asked questions. So preparing a patient for that could help. What I found interesting was the process that was done to find medications that would help the quality of life, and also in a lot of cases, new treatments that would come out that would affect people. For example, in transplantation, research and trials were done to show the importance of exercise pre and post transplant. And that not only works for the transplant community, but it also works for anyone who is having a major surgery. So the benefits of exercise and nutrition is very important. Unfortunately, I didn't have any input during these studies. They were presented to me, as Mark said, like I would review them. There's some I did. A lot of mine were on like quality of life, like nutrition and, as I said, medications and that, but definitely didn't have any input. However, now what I'm doing is I definitely have input because now I'm a patient partner in research with the Canadian Donation Transplant Research Program. And what I've been able to do is when we first started getting patients involved, we determined what the priorities were for patients. So we're working on the list. And so researchers are looking at, what does the patient want? And we're putting those in front of them. So now more research and trials are being done on what's important to the patient. One of the things I'm also fortunate is that I'm involved right from the very beginning. So sometimes, the concept is usually done by the research team, but I get to review their summary, their grant submission, their REB comments back, any posters or surveys that they may be presenting to the patients or the caregivers, depending on what kind of trial or research is being done. I'm also able to help them like to do the informed part. So as I said, like with the posters and that, and also to consult, and in a lot of ways about how the researchers get consent. And just like what Fisola said about, you know, knowing who your client is, knowing who your base is, and like, and I thought Mark was going to talk with the Wonder Bread that we're all the same, but no, like knowing your audience and understanding that we all have different needs and requirements. So thank you for that. And I wish you all the best on your clinical trials. And I hope going forward that you include a patient voice, because you'll be happy that you did. Thank you.
Hi, Maureen.
Maureen, you're on.
Thank you so much, everyone. I just want to let you know, Maureen, you're muted.
I was muted. Here we go. The expression of 2021. You're on mute.
You're on mute. How many times have we
Okay.
heard that this year, eh?
Well,
Can't escape it.
I wasn't saying anything too important. Okay.
I'm sure you were, but let's restart. Okay, thanks.
So I thank Sandra for her presentation and for talking about the importance of patient partnerships and research. And I just want to let everyone know that I'm going to loop back to that at the very end so that Fizola and Mark can jump in on that too. But thank you for that, Sandra. There's a question in the chat box. It's targeted to Mark, but I'm going to ask everyone to answer it. So it's specifically, Mark, about the Wonder Bread study. What would have made it easier for you to make a decision about participating as a first-time study participant? And I'll ask Fizola and Sandra to go way back in time and imagine themselves as a first-time study participant. What kind of things can a research team do to make it easier for you to make a decision about, you know, entering that trial, either Fizola for your children or Sandra for yourself? So I'll let you go on with the Wonder Bread, Mark, because you've got everyone's attention with that.
All right. So for that one particular, I don't think it was the issue was me signing up, but the issue was more, you know, what was the purpose behind doing this? Like, why did I have to eat this bread in a certain amount of time? Why was it 10 slices? Why was it Wonder Bread? And so I think it was just the problem I had with that clinical trial as an example, and why it's something I continue to remember is because of I didn't know the why, and I still don't know the why today. Like, I know it had something to do with digestion, and they were looking at something around those lines, but I think that was the big point. I think that if I didn't have such a good connection with my clinical team, the experience in that study might have turned me off from doing studies in the future.
Thanks, Mark. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Being transparent with the why, basically.
Right. That's a great point. So Fizola, you are a parent. You have to make this decision for your children. Going back to the very beginning, what would have made it easier for you?
I think one of the bigger things for me is that when you're making a decision that doesn't necessarily directly affect your life, it's weighs more than you. If you make a decision and it negatively affects your life. But when you make a decision for your child, and then you have to think about how they'll feel in the future and what they might want for their future goals. So I think a lot of the things that were very important to me was the big picture and the long-term effects, where I felt like a lot of times when they would come to me with a a study, they would be, okay, so we're going to do A, B, and C, and we just need to show up here and do this. And okay, so like, what are the implications of that? Like, you know, what are the long-term effects? What are the short-term effects? You know, I felt like more detail. Sometimes I felt like they just glossed over things, and maybe it's because they've said it so many times and the information was just like known to them. They didn't feel that they needed to share it, but I don't know what your study is. I don't know what you're doing, and I need all the details.
That's great. Sandra, going way back.
Well, yeah, or even now is like a summary, like a basic summary, because I talk to the people that I'm doing research with. It's like, I said, there's so much information in here, and there's so much, because they have to do the REB review, right? So it's like, there's so much information in here. There's so many opportunities for me to say no, right? But in this case, with what Mark is talking about, a one-page summary is that we're going to have 10 pieces of bread. This is why we're doing it. We want to see how your body digests it, if it affects your breathing because of your lungs and that. So just something like, it's knowledge translation. It's explaining it to the patient from their point of view, right? Now, also, they do have to go through everything else, but they can explain that's all the details that we need for our study to get approved. But a one-page summary, easy to read.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sandra. So I don't see another question in the chat, so I'm going to use my moderator's privilege here and ask my own question. So Fizzola, in your presentation, you brought up trust, and that's a really important word. And in this audience, we have a lot of clinical trial, research coordinators and people who, who are the ones meeting with the participants. What does the audience need to know about participants trusting the clinical trial team? So how can they get that trust from you? What is it that they really have to do? And whoever would like to go first, just jump right in.
So I'll start. So for me, I feel it's full disclosure. So there was a study that somebody approached me with for one of my sons, and I felt like there was a major long-term implication that they avoided. And I specifically knew that was there, and I asked the questions to see if they would tell me it, and they avoided it. And so from that point on, anything else that you tell me, I don't trust you, because now I don't know what I don't know. So I feel like if you have information and there are connecting factors that are going to affect, you should share that information. And it's not just I felt like a lot of times they just spoke about like the immediate symptoms. Okay, so if you vomit, come on, you'll get over that. But infertility, I think you should share that. So yeah, that was just one of the things for me. I think details.
That's really important. Thank you. Mark or Sandra, do you want to chime in on this one about what the research team can do to have your trust?
Well, there's a lot of history of non-trust in a lot of different cultures, right? Which I think Fisola brought up. But yeah, definitely. I don't like when there's assumptions made that we don't know what they're talking about, so therefore, like, don't tell us, right? So don't assume that, like patients, we live with this 24/7, and as Fisola with her kids, it's her life, right? They know all the things. So like, be open with us and discuss it. And then when we ask questions, be honest and truthful with us. So.
Okay, Mark?
For me, I think the trust comes from that personal connection. So, do you ask questions like, are you married? Do you have kids? Asking those kind of what's your occupation, stuff like that will help build that trust and help you, feel more connected to, the people who are asking you to do this, and that if they see you as a person, you're more likely to trust them and trust the process. So that's a big thing for me, is just, that personal connection and feeling that they, have your best interest, because there is an element of risk when you do these clinical trials. So that is a big thing so that they have your best interests at heart.
Thank you. That's great. I'm just checking to see if anything else is coming in, and I don't see anything, so I'm going to just continue here. So Mark, you entertained us with your Burger King story. I know I was having a good laugh here, but behind that story is a really important point. And you were talking about rewards for participating. So not just the benefits, we all know there's benefits, but an actual reward. And I'm wondering if Mark, you have more ideas of rewards, or if Fizzola and Sandra would like to tell us, is there something that researchers can do for your children, Fizzola, or even for yourself as the caregiver who's bringing them to the appointments, that's just like a bonus that you're getting for participating in the trial?
I'll take it then. I have a problem with the corporation, the corporate background of some of these gift certificates and things that are presented to us. So like, you know, it's like we're doing studies and the guy, one of the researchers says, well, we're going to get everyone a Tim Hortons card. And I said, a $25 Tim Hortons card isn't going to be an incentive for me to continue with your research or your trial, right? However, you know, compensation for my time, or if I have to travel to the hospital, you know, reimbursement of my gas, a gas card, or groceries, like something I have to buy all the time. But, you know, or I even said, like, why can't you give a gift certificate from your, like, you know, your hospital gift store? Because then it goes back to the hospital. So I think we need to be a little bit more creative in how we do. But as far as with the patient partner part of it, it's compensation. It's compensation for our time and our commitment.
That's great. Thank you, Sandra. Fizzola?
Yes, so I agree with Sandra, like in terms of like the gas and like the parking. But there was one study that one of my children did when they were smaller, and after it, he got to pick a toy, and it wasn't like one of those like small. Like they actually gave him like a substantial truck. He was super excited. The next time they said, "Is there a study?" He's like, "Sign me up." So I thought that was really nice that study, like they actually personalized it for him, and they gave him like this really big remote control car that meant a lot to him, so he felt valued. So
that's great. Mark, did you want to add anything else were there other rewards that you didn't tell us about?
No, for me, it's mainly, you know, I think most of the clinical trials I've taken part of, there has been a compensation, monetary compensation. So that's been fine. But, you know, for some clinical trials where I've taken part in just a day, or, you know, maybe they're, you know, asking me to do exercise or something like that, you know, it'd be a nice, you know, just something, maybe a thank you card coming in a week later, or just something like that. Like, I know not every clinical study is going to be able to provide you, you know, with monetary rewards based on the restrictions. So just something like that just lets, again, it's connecting with the person and understanding that this is a person, this person did you a favor for the most part, and recognizing that.
That's great. So now I'm going to loop back to patients and caregivers who move from being participants in clinical trials to partners or collaborators with research as part of the clinical trial team. I think Sandra explained to us exactly what she was doing and everything that she's been able to give back that way to make the experience better for others. The subject very near and dear my heart, so I'm really glad that we're able to talk about this. So I think I'd like to go to Mark and Fizzola first and see, have you had experiences doing that? And if you didn't, is it something that you would consider doing? So Mark, I think I'll start with you.
For that, I'm just trying to think, like, from the healthcare team. If you could just, if Fisola can go first, I just want to gather my thoughts. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So for me, yes, I have been doing that. So for the current trial that I'm in, I'm like one of the point people that they send everybody to have a conversation with, for my experiences and from my perspective and from my thoughts on it. And I think when it comes from another parent to another parent, there's a different trust factor there, because there's no motivation in me saying anything to you, and so it has a lot more weight.
That's great. Okay.
For me, I think it's been a little different, because my cystic fibrosis is an interesting disease in which you don't really interact with people. You have to stay apart from each other and things along those lines. So I don't get to connect with other people like on one-on-one or in person, but I have been recruited to be part of a YouTube series where to share my story about clinical trials. So if anyone's interested, if you go to YouTube, type Mark Becker cystic fibrosis, you will see that video of a little trying to recruit people to take part in clinical studies.
That's great. So Sandra, what has the patient partnership role brought to your life as a patient?
No, it's been amazing, because I've been able to be the voice for a lot of people within the transplant community, which also includes donor families, living donors, as well as that. So it's good. And then I've really, it's a growing process. Like sometimes at first, some of the researchers and, some of the doctors are like, wow, like patients here and that, but they've really seen the value and what we bring in that. So it's really good. The other thing too, and that's sort of what Fisola and Mark had brought up, is what I've been trying to do, is that the mentor process of it. So like there's some trials that we're doing that are experiences for patients or donor families, and so it's sort of having a patient or a donor family mentor the person who might be going into that study, to get them to understand. So it's what Fisola said. It's because that way, we can say, well, this is what you should expect, and it prepares them. So they're not going out there like just blinded. They'll be able to see, okay, well, this is what's expected. So
I agree. There's no stronger voice than patient speaking to patient or parent to parent. And so, Mark, with your YouTube videos, that's exactly what you're doing. You're really presenting it, from your perspective, and people can relate to that. And same thing for Fizola and Sandra. So it's really, I hope that researchers appreciate that lived experience that we accumulate by being part of clinical trials. And I think that's part of what the toolkit is doing, is that it's helping to make that experience better by working with people with lived experience in clinical trials to develop all of these tools. So I'm really hoping that it's all part and parcel, the same thing. It's really listening to us. So we're almost done. Is it, Sandra?
yeah,
jump right in, please.
Just one thing I wanted to mention is that the clinical trials decision aid for patients and researchers on the Clinical Trials Ontario website is fantastic. It's the one place that I've seen everything there, and I've actually shared it with the Canadian Donation Transplant Research Program and other people that are doing patient partnerships. So kudos to Clinical Trials Ontario for that aid. It's lots of information, and it's a good thing to refer patients and researchers to.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that you're using it and that you're sending other people to it. So unless someone has a closing sentence that they're burning to get out that they didn't have a chance to express, I'm just going to wrap up otherwise. Last chance. Okay, so I think we've heard just 3 amazing presentations, lots of food for thought. So if you're, I just hope that you're thinking when you're approaching patients about what Mark, Fizola, and Sandra shared with us, and it's very powerful. And I also have to say, it's very brave of people to come forth like this and speak about their experiences. I don't think that people who are not involved understand that it's an invasion of our privacy to a certain extent, but we do it because we want other people to have positive experiences. And so I thank them from the bottom of my heart for all of the wonderful experience that they've shared with us. And I thank you for coming to this session. I hope you enjoyed it.